Assessment Feedback Webinar number 3. I am Kelly Bokoschuk, Superintendent of Learning. And with me this morning, we have Melissa Lander and Vanessa Lewis, our learning consultants, who have been doing the webinar series as a team for the last few weeks. And we're really looking forward to another great session with you this morning. So today we are on Assessment Feedback Series webinar number 3. We have focused in on previously to the 1 in 4 rule, looking at student reflections and assessment, using technology strategically, and peer feedback. Today our focus is going to be on recognizing busy work and having students show their best work. So looking forward to discussing those two topics with you this morning. So just to note, if you haven't had a chance to take part in our previous webinars, you can access them in the resource bank, but we have provided you with a tiny URL up on the screen that Vanessa shared with you in the chat box as well. So feel free to watch our previous recordings as well as access the PowerPoint that went along with it.
So with All Learning, we're hoping to help students identify what they know and determine what they need to know so that we can guide them as they begin to take ownership of their own learning. Assessment plays a really key role in this learning journey by helping to structure a pathway for our students. So whether we're involved in face-to-face or online assessments, the overall purposes of assessment remain the same. And really sound assessment practices can help us improve learning, allow for gathering of information to help teachers or to help students identify where they are, which in turn helps to inform instruction and also play a significant role in monitoring impact and measuring success. So our hope with all of this is to develop assessment capable, visible learners. And we've used quite a few of the ideas in the resource that you can see on the left-hand side of your screen there by Nancy Fry, John Hattie, and Douglas Fisher as a reference in generating some ideas that we've included in this assessment series. And our kind of the vision is to develop learners who are assessment capable. So that sort of looks like learners who know his or her current level of understanding, who know where he or she is headed and has the confidence or the ability to get there. Students who can identify and access tools needed to progress on his or her own personalized learning journey, and students who can effectively reflect on his or her progress. So with that in mind, we need to find ways to effectively support student learning. And Hattie suggests that we as teachers can increase or maximize student learning if we focus our activities and efforts on practices that are proven to have the greatest impact on learning. So according to Hattie, feedback, which we've been talking about for the last couple webinars and again today with a focus on feedback, it is one of those effective practices. And it has an effect size of 0.73. So with 0.4 being the hinge point and anything higher than that of having the potential to make significant impact, it seems to be a solid area to focus our efforts. So this webinar will continue to focus on the importance of feedback as part of the assessment process and in helping support assessment capable learners. So with that, I'll just turn it over to Melissa, who's going to provide us with a quick overview of the assessment process.
Okay, thanks, Vanessa. So just to bring us back to the fact that assessment can really be broken down into a process, and just to remind us what that looks like. If you wanted to have some more detail about this, you can go back and look at webinar 1, where we go through it in a bit more depth and detail. But essentially, this has to be something where the students are involved throughout the process. So assessment isn't just something where they become involved at the end. They should be involved throughout the process and right from the very beginning. We want them to understand what it looks like and feels like to be assessed, because ultimately they will be the ones assessing their own learning as we progress through the transfer of responsibility into those we do's and you do's. So we want them to have a really good understanding of how this works. And this is what will build those assessment capable learners that Vanessa was talking about. So the first step, of course, is always sharing that learning outcome and making sure the students have a good understanding of what that outcome is actually looking like. Setting that success criteria together. How do you know you've met this outcome? And making sure that the kids have a clear understanding of that. And then looking at some of those readiness assessments and looking at how ready are you to learn this content or this skill. What do you need to know that you don't already know, or what supports are you going to need? And then moving into the actual learning where the formative loop is important. And the kids have that ability to reflect throughout the process and how their learning monitored. And really importantly, learn how to monitor their own learning so that they can advocate for themselves and say, listen, I need some help with X or Y. And then, of course, at the end, we have summative, where you could be popping back into the formative if they haven't quite met that outcome, or they need a little bit more help, or you could be moving on to some enrichment or on to the next learning outcome.
Okay, so in our webinar series, we've been using the 6 ways to give effective feedback, short video that Edutopia has put together. And so as per our last few webinars, we're going to review that. We've gone through tips 1, 2, 3, and 4, and today we're focusing on 5 and 6. But it's always good for us to refresh our memories about what the first 4 tips were. And again, just to note that this video has been developed by gathering tips and feedback from teachers that have been looking at feedback. So we'll just take a moment to watch the video. So we hope that gave you a great review of the first 4 tips, and today we're going to focus on tips 5 and tip 6. So
yes,
Vanessa?
So in the first webinar series, we looked at tip 1, which was a quick reminder, was the 1 in 4 rule, and tip 2, which was student self-assessment. In the second webinar, we investigated tip 3, which was strategic use of tech tools, and tip 4, peer feedback. So we're going to get rolling today by digging a little bit deeper into tip number 5 around recognizing busy work. So it's important for us to carefully consider curricular outcomes and structured learning experiences to meet the needs of students and to help them achieve those outcomes. And a first step to this is to learn how to recognize busy work. So to begin our discussions on this, we've prepared a quick poll, which will pop onto the screen here momentarily. And then we invite you, and Kelly will kind of be looking at the chat to respond to the prompt, and we'll have a slight discussion on it. So you're looking at in the poll, it should appear in the chat very quickly or very shortly, which of the following may be considered busy work? So A is multiplication worksheet, B number talk, C coloring a math book title page, and D all of the above. And we'll give you a moment to respond.
So far, we have C and D as our top two choices, all of the above, and coloring a math book title page. So let's have a little bit of a discussion about this. I guess it always depends on what you're focusing in on with regards to the outcome. At times, a multiplication worksheet certainly could be considered busy work, but other times it's reinforcing to get to that mastery piece. So as we were developing this particular poll, we were really thinking about different ways that we could be looking at these specific to math assignments or activities. And so number talks typically would be looking at mastery again and diving deeper in. But the question is, coloring a math book title page, what do you think? Is that busy work, or is that actually is that mastery towards a math outcome, or is your outcome an art outcome? So it's a consideration. I invite you to share in the chat box or take the microphone if you feel very strongly that all of the above could be considered busy work, or take a moment to talk about why you chose specifically C. Anyone have anything to add here? So I guess the bottom line is being very cognizant of what you're asking for feedback on and what you're asking students to complete, and whether or not it is busy work. So always think about that mastery piece of the learning and starting with the feedback process and thinking about what the outcomes are and what you want students to achieve. So with that, I'll turn it back to Vanessa.
Yeah, it certainly was a bit of a trick question. And like Kelly said, it really just depends on the outcome or the concept being explored, where the learner's at, and what his or her needs are at any given time. So it was a tricky one, and we really thank everybody for participating in the poll. So as we discussed, a number of things need to be considered, and it's possible that not every new concept requires that accompanying assignment. So instead, it's important to think about the purpose of the planned assignment or the activity and see that it is fulfilling, or maybe it's not, in support of mastery learning. So if it's not, is there a way to rethink it or possibly even pitch it? So for some advice on this, we've looked to some teacher tested tips, and we're very fortunate to have a respected colleague join us for this discussion again. And Kelly, I believe you are going to provide the introduction.
Absolutely. So we'll just move to the next slide. So I would like to invite Courtney McDonald, teacher at Northwest Central School, who is going to take some time to share some of the tips that she's got with regards to busy work. Courtney is Pebble mentor, student support teacher, senior ELA, and I think doing some senior science as well. So quite a diverse portfolio, and we're looking forward to hearing what Courtney has to share with regards to busy work. So welcome, Courtney.
Thanks for the introduction, Kelly. Okay, so today I'm going to share with you how I recognized and avoided busy work in my high school ELA classroom specifically. So the idea that we saw in the video and that Vanessa shared with us about falling prey to the idea that every new concept needs an accompanying assignment, instead of only selecting assignments that are crucial for mastery, is something that I've shown growth in just this past year, really, in my classroom. So I'll just flash back to 2 years ago quickly. And every time my students would do a text study, I would have them complete a series of questions for hand-in. So I never really considered this busy work until I asked myself, what are students getting out of this question-answer style of response? And I thought, sure, they're sharing their comprehension of the text, but this is also a really easy way for some students to just get answers from another classmate, and it doesn't really improve on their writing when they're answering in 1 to 2 sentences. So Then I fast forward you to this year when I changed that up a bit. This year, I still had students answer some questions based on the text, but then I used those as formative assessment in a class discussion. What I had them do for Handin was a written response connecting to a CRCC outcome that insisted they write at least a paragraph, if not more, and share their own ideas, making connections beyond just their comprehension of the text. So I noticed deeper understanding as well as stronger writing, topic sentences, transition statements, and integration of textual evidence all improved with my class. So if I can share the screen, Kelly, I was just going to share one assignment that I had them do. Oh, I think I'm clicking on something. Just a second. That one. Okay, perfect. Oh. Okay, so we should see where I come from the poem on there. So I had my students, and this has been through my Google Classroom, so just a few weeks ago, since we've moved online for learning, I had them read this poem, and then I had them pick the most important line or two from each stanza, and then defend their point of view by answering why is this line important. So that part I would have then collected and marked and handed back to them. Instead, this year, with my kind of change in thoughts and avoidance of some of that more busy work, I instead had them answer these questions and pick their lines from the stanzas, and then we had a class discussion on that. So I didn't mark this part. They all gave their input. And then what I did mark was they had to write their own poem explaining or describing where they come from. So as a class, we went through and we made a few expectations for it. So how many lines should it be? How many literary devices should we put into our poem, which had been some prior learning when we'd done that. We followed the writing process where they did some brainstorming and then drafting their poem. And then they had to add some creativity to their lines as well. I had them share this both as a presentation mark, so I was able to use a CC outcome, as well as a writing assessment. So that was, sorry, a second CC outcome for that one as well. And then I had them self-assess using the rubric before submitting it. And again, we used the rubric that SunWest School Division has, the 4-point rubric, for the presentation piece. And then we added almost kind of like the checklist piece to the bottom as a group to add in the CC 830.1 part. So we're looking at visual, oral, and written text about identity, so where they come from. So having shared that, I'll just jump back here now. So after having done this with my students this year, I have just seen a tremendous amount of growth in their writing for longer essays. And I feel as though I won't go back to the 1 to 2 sentence question and answer sheets anymore for Handin. Rather, I'll just continue to use those to revamp our discussions and save the more authentic writing tasks for Handin, where they can show their mastery of understanding and relating the text to our course themes and outcomes. And that's what I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Courtney. So many great pieces to what you shared with us. Some of the things that stand out to me certainly is the reflection that you made on your own practice, the reflection that you thought about, you know, what kind of connection to mastery and deep learning that the students were having. I also noticed how you involved students and brought in that voice within the assessment piece and developing part of that rubric together, but also using one and had the students self-assess on the division rubric that was put together. So it's evident to me that your students are involved with their assessment process throughout, and really appreciate you sharing, you know, your journey with regards to busy work today.
Thanks, Kelly.
Okay, so moving along to tip 6, we're going to look at show me your best work, which is very similar to our 1 in 4 rule, but increasing the amount of student voice and choice. So I think it has a little bit more power than the 1 in 4 rule, but we're going to start by asking you a question. So we are looking at which of the following may be an example of showing me your best work. So providing feedback on every journal entry, providing feedback on 1 in 4 journal entries, inviting students to choose a journal entry every week for the teacher to provide feedback on, or all of the above. So this little poll should be popping up into the chat soon, and I think Kelly's going to share with us what the results are.
So if you've ever used Poly, you know that you can't pre-create the survey. So we are doing it just in time here, and Vanessa's taken on that role. So it should be popping up shortly
Yes,
for you. And there we go.
I had a slight malfunction.
All good. So there we go. So please choose A, B, C, or D with regards to the poll, and we'll have a quick discussion about it. So far, everyone is picking C.
So smart.
So smart. Oh, look at, now we're up to everybody. So 100%, that tells me you're fairly solid on understanding that inviting that student to choose, and that voice and choice is really key when talking about students showing their best work. So excellent. Love the fact that we're on the same page with regards to this. So we'll dive a little bit deeper into it. Melissa?
Okay, thank you. So when you're working on similar assignments, something like that journal is a great example of it. Or, you know, when you're doing multiple stories, say in English language arts, you don't need to necessarily dive deeply into every one of those things. And in that way, this is how this is really similar to that 1 in 4 rule. But where it becomes different is that the students are leading the assessment, which is great. We want them involved in that process, and they're picking what they feel best represents their learning. This is a great, great tip, because the kids throughout this process will start to learn about, well, what is a good example of this? So it's building that assessment capable learner where they know what their best work looks like. And it gives them that chance, if maybe they're struggling a little bit in the beginning of your unit or at the beginning of learning that concept, they're not going to be penalized for that. You're going to get the piece of work that demonstrates that they have it. And if they don't, then you know you have to have a little intervention, maybe do some instruction. So it's just involving them one step deeper. And I think it really is a step towards building those assessment capable learners. So it doesn't mean you don't have to look at what they've done for the other assignments that they've done, that they're not getting the feedback. Just quickly check that they're done. And that way, you know, you're still building that accountability in your classroom. It's not that you only have to do a really good job on the one. It's, you know, we are accountable for all of them, but I'm going to provide you that feedback, which is going to push you a little bit further on that one piece that you select. So the same again, we asked some teachers, and we do have a special guest to talk about the showing your best work. And I believe Kelly is going to do the introduction.
Thanks, Melissa. So would like to introduce this morning Shauna George. She is a teacher at Loreburn School, and her role is Pebble Mentor and grade 3-4 teacher, if I've got that correct. And we're looking forward to hearing what tips she has for us this morning, thinking about her own practice and talking about inviting students to show their best work. So welcome, Shauna.
Thanks, ladies. Good morning, everybody. So I have been teaching for a few years, but watching the webinar series has really got me reflecting on my effectiveness in evaluating my students and how very differently this looks in different subjects. I definitely have much room for improvement, but I can give you a little insight onto how I use the tip, show me your best work, in my classroom, to not only effectively assess outcomes, but also to honor the students' IEEPs, their student support plans, their learner profiles, which identify their strengths and weaknesses, their likes and dislikes, and as well as managing my own sanity, because all of our plates are really full most times. This also saves me from marking everything and really fits well within our school because Lorbourn is a Leader in Me Lighthouse school, and every student has a leadership binder that is full of their best work. To refer back to the assessment continuum slide that Melissa shared earlier, the first steps have to be to share with the students the guidelines for their success, their learning outcome or indicator, sharing and co-creating a rubric, or at least examining exemplars of the levels of the assignment. This is imperative because students need to recognize what they need to accomplish to show how they met the outcome and hopefully the mastery of it. In order for Show Me Your Best Work to truly be effective, students must be comfortable and proud of what they're submitting to you. My first example of Show Me Your Best Work tip is in my ELA writing block. We were learning to write personal narratives this year. We did the pre-writing activities and wrote rough copies of 3 different story ideas that the students chose, but the students only selected what they thought was their best piece then to revise, edit, publish, and share from that point on. In math, the Show Me My Best Work can be done both orally or kinesthetically because of their preferred learning style again. One of my students this year designed and built a model of a 3D shape. And then he orally described its edges, vertices, faces, and bases, and even calculated the volume and surface areas for me, because paper and pencil method of drawing and labeling is not his neatest or his most accurate method of assessment. This can also be recorded on a video platform and uploaded to Seesaw, which is what I use in my room. Or you could use Teams or OneDrive if you would like to save it to be graded later if you don't have that one-to-one time. I also apply this to math strategies. I can teach them the many ways to solve an equation and have them practice that skill, but then let them show me their best work again to show the mastery of the outcome. For me, if a student can't easily grasp using base 10 blocks to show division, I'm not going to force it on them. But I'll encourage them to use their best method to ensure that they have mastery with one strategy that works best for them and then grade them on that. I'm also trying to use this strategy in combination with Pebble this year in my art class, which is that personalized learning that our school division is working towards. The past 2 years, I've been giving the students an indicator or a theme to choose their own projects to complete to meet the outcome. Some students will do 3 projects and choose 1 to be marked, and others spend all their time on making their first one their best one. The students can choose their medium, their topic, their method, etc., that they prefer to achieve their best work for grading. This could be painting or building or sculpting or performing. And especially in our new online COVID world, the students have really had a unique opportunity to really choose to submit their best work from home to me, because I don't want all their busy paperwork in. I just want really to see their best. As I said, my teaching is still developing and evolving, looking for new and better ways to be more effective in my classroom, and especially in the areas of assessment and feedback. As I said, these strategies can be used across curriculum outcomes, so it's less busy work when you can give them an assignment and let them choose and then use those outcomes, as Courtney said before, as an assess and reflect piece in ELA and as a presenting outcome in ELA, as well as possibly a science outcome and an art outcome that really fits in with their learner profiles. Hopefully these ideas give you some inspiration as to what you can do in your classroom, or maybe you're already doing but you haven't recognized yet. Thanks, ladies, for inviting me to share today.
Thank you so very much, Shauna. So many great pieces to this, and makes me think a lot about our Pebble philosophy and how many of the different elements of our, the key aspects of our Pebble philosophy you've identified. And you know, everything from the cross-curricular way of looking at gaining feedback and showing your best work, tying to the learner profile, how important it is to be considering working on our strengths, but also, or showing our strengths, but also working on our challenging areas. So having, you know, opportunities to work on areas that might be challenging, but reinforce those areas of strength, getting that student voice. And I really appreciate, I think both of you have talked a lot about, you know, your own teaching practice and reflecting on where you're at and knowing that we are all learners as well. So that's some really key pieces to what I heard, and really talking about how this way of thinking about showing your best work applies to the deep learning and having students have voice in that, and really thinking about, okay, what am I going to show that really shows what I've learned towards the outcomes that we've been discussing. So thank you so much for sharing your tips. If anybody else has anything they'd like to add with regards to show your best work, please feel free to do so in the chat. Or if you'd like to talk a little bit about showing your busy work, please feel free to add to the chat as well.
Okay, so just moving on, a quick reminder that we do have the Assessment Hub available for you. So a lot of the tools that we've talked about today and a lot of the ideas and today's webinar as well, you can find that here up in the best practices. A lot of the great tools that you need to do the assessment and involve the kids and look at them throughout the process are available for you here. So hopefully you have a chance to explore that hub if you haven't already. There is a link up here for you to find it, but if you go to the resource bank and click hubs, you'll see a little purple brain filled with cogs. If you click that, it'll bring you right to this hub, and you'll see a little bit more on the assessment process there as well.
So at this point, we're going to ask for questions, but I was about to type in another piece about what Shauna had mentioned with regards to recognition and how important it is for us to recognize our journeys, recognize the good things that we do, and recognize the things where we can improve. So always looking at our growth and potential, and that's really why we put you know, a focus on that R in our reorder framework. So again, I just wanted to bring that up. And does anyone have any questions for us this morning? Okay, so with that, I would like to thank you again for participating this morning in our third webinar series. And next week on June 4th, same time, same place, we will have our final webinar on our feedback series, and we'll be focusing in on distance learning and looking specifically at formative and summative assessment. So we look forward to having you back. And with that, I'll stop the recording and wish you all a great rest of your day and rest of your week.